Springer, right?
Welcome to the program. We have reached the middle of the week, and glad all of you are with us. We think we got a pretty good show on tap. Live from New York on this cold winter day, even though it's still autumn. Thanks for being a part of the program. Let's get right to it. Let's share some headlines with you that you may find interesting. The NCAA, highly probable Congress passes athletic comp rules. What does this mean? We will dig deep into the conversation. Mark Emmert had plenty to say about it. Members of Congress care about college sports. They recognize how important it is to American society. They don't want to do harm. They want to make it better, but it's going to be a long road. It's not going to be something that happens overnight. Thanks, Mark, for checking in with us. Joe Brady has won the Brawls Award for the top assistant coach. Not bad for a guy that was just pretty much an intern last year with the Saints. Look at the difference, 31.3 points a game to 46, 17 passing TDs to 49, nearly doubled the passing yardage and improved the yards per play. Lynn Bowden has won the Paul Hornung Award as college football's most versatile player. It is award season, in case you were wondering why we were sharing all those awards with you. Bowden was the only FBS player, actually the only one over the last 25 years with at least 300 passing receptions, 1,200 rushing yards, and 300 receiving yards in a season. You can say he did everything but sell popcorn. Here's what's coming up on the program this afternoon. Josh Bertaccini from Northwest Arkansas. He hosts the #1 show out there. He will tell us what the reaction's been. Matt Rule, candidate for Coach of the Year from Baylor, going to a big bowl. Vince Thompson will be here. And Chris Lowe, who will spend some time with who else but the Lane Train. But first, your phone calls here on this Wednesday afternoon at 855-242-7285. Always a fun part of the program. And let's start with Mike, who is in Georgia. Mike, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello, Paul. How are you this evening?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you.
Yep, that's a pretty good season the Gators had this year, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yep. How you reckon they'll do in the bowl game?
I think they'll do well. I think they'll win.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. I keep my fingers crossed. I never go too positive on my Gators. I don't want to jinx them, you know.
Well, don't worry about jinxing them. With Dan Mullen in charge, you don't have to worry about that. Dave is in Baton Rouge. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
I am well, thank you.
I'm sorry I had you on speakerphone for a second. Let me tell you something, Mr. Finebaum.
Yes, sir.
Life could not have been any better yesterday in Baton Rouge. We had Coach O winning all the awards. We had Joe Brady winning all the awards. We got Burrow going to get the Heisman. And in the middle of all of this yesterday, the Dave Aranda story broke. And you would have thought Baton Rouge has stopped with the phone calls between everybody yesterday. So we dodged a bullet for sure.
Yeah, you know, what I thought was the biggest part of the Aranda going, I think it was to Vegas, was the distraction that would be created for the playoffs and the championship. And listen, if that's what he wanted, if he wanted to be a head coach, obviously he's considering it. But I've watched this before with coaches, and no matter what the circumstances are, I've seen it with Kirby Smart, I've seen it with Jeremy Pruitt, I've seen it with Lane Kiffin, I've seen it with Dan Mullen when he was at Florida. David Cutcliffe finally walked away when he was at Tennessee. It's always a problem, and for LSU, that was a big deal keeping him yesterday.
No doubt, because the thing that scared me was the recruiting, Paul.
Well, listen, yeah, I mean, we're talking a couple of days away from National Signing Day, 7 days away. That would you would have lost some players. There's no getting around it because there isn't a replacement for Dave Aranda. Thanks for the call. Really good to have you on. Mike in Birmingham is up next. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
Hey, bud. What's up?
What's the latest on the tour situation? Has it made the announcement yet?
What was that, Mike?
What's the latest on the tour? Has he made the announcement yet if he's going to stay or going pro or what?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Do you
Hey,
think?
thanks for the call. Appreciate it. John is up next in Baton Rouge. Hey, John.
Hey, Paul. Good day to you.
Thank you.
I just kind of wanted to mention about several things, but the first thing I wanted to mention was the playing surface over in Atlanta with all that rubberized mess.
It was terrible.
On the artificial turf. It really seemed to affect Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You know, he's a dynamic back. He does a lot of real special moves, and he was slipping and losing his footing quite a bit on that surface. And I kind of hate to see him have to go back and play on that surface again, even though it's closer for our fan base. But
I thought that was I never really got a chance to talk to anybody there about what the problem was, but it was a mess. People were falling down all over the place.
It seemed like too much of it on there to me. I know it seemed like the first place I ever saw that mess on the field was in the Superdome with the Saints. But anyway, another thing I wanted to mention, all these Alabama fans, they keep mentioning about Saban going to stay. You know, it seems like he's going to stay forever, but Saban is 68 years old. And I don't know how many more years he's going to want to fight coaching. You know, he don't need any more money for sure, but everybody acts like he's in his 40s, but he won't be there that much longer.
You know,
I'm sure.
John, it's interesting. I mean, I think Alabama fans are so used to saying, well, we have Nick Saban, that they're not really facing reality. I don't know when he's going to leave. And, you know, I'm not going to bore you with his health and his physical condition. He's in good shape. But 68 is still 68. I mean, I've seen a lot of coaches reach the latter part of their 60s, and there is usually some decline. I know that sounds like an indictment of people, but I mean, listen, there are plenty of people in their 70s and 80s who are healthy, and I mean, the President of the United States is in his 70s. Several candidates are in their upper 70s. So that doesn't mean you can't do it, but what it does mean is that people will use it against you.
Right, that's for sure. And on a humorous note, I kind of wanted to mention that I figured everybody's been beating Les Miles' door down, trying to get him to come coach their football teams. He was such a dynamic coach. He did win 3 games this year. I wonder what your thoughts were on that.
You know, I'm kind of off the Les train. The media has a blind spot for him, but I wouldn't hire Les Miles to coach my grandson's Pee-wee football team. I just don't think he's much of a coach. I don't even have a grandson. Harold is up next. Good afternoon, Harold. Welcome to the program.
Yes, how are you?
I'm well.
Good. Yeah, I want to talk about the upcoming playoffs and the final rankings and some of the bowl games.
Yes, sir.
I'm from Ohio. I'm a big fan of Buckeyes.
Well, good. Hey, could you turn that sound down so we can hear you a little better?
Yeah, sure do. In fact, I put it on mute. Yeah, I'm just glad that we could funnel a good quarterback to LSU from Ohio to help him finally win.
Good point. That's a good point. Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it, Harold. Let's go to Peyton next. Hey, Peyton.
Happy holidays, Finebaum. How you been, sir?
Well, thank you.
Quite a couple questions. Chase Young versus Derek Brown. Who do you think is going to have a more successful NFL career?
Listen, I think it's a marginal debate. I think Chase Young's the best player I've seen in college football this year, if that helps answer the question.
Okay. All right. Another question I got about Chad Morris. You know, I still don't really get who's calling the plays and all that. You know, not that I'm supposed to, but
there's nothing to guess, Peyton. It's Gus Malzahn. He's the play caller at Auburn, and he'll remain the play caller. Thank you for the call. Mike is in Georgia. Hey, Mike.
Hello, Paul. This is
hey there. What's
Mike
up?
Again. Nothing. I don't know if you remember me. I called you in week 0.
I do remember you. Yes.
Asking for prayers for my mother.
I sure do. Can you give us an update?
Yes, sir, I can. It's amazing. We got the test results back last Tuesday, and all the lesions on her brain are gone. or either in remission, and she has to have tests every 3 months.
Well, that is fabulous news. Listen, no one's ever underestimated the power of prayer, and in this case, Mike, let's hope that was a part of the factor, and let's also hope and pray that she remains in recovery. Thank you for the call. Hate to run. We have guests galore, including Matt Rule in the next hour. More of your phone calls. We're glad you're with us here on a Tuesday. We are live in New York, too.
Hey, Paul. I was looking at Jim's name on the TV screen. Got a little confused there.
And we won the championship. We were celebrating. I go in, check my phone, and my agent had left me a message, said that Missouri was on their way to meet with me and wanted to set up a meeting with me. My daughter was performing in the Nutcracker at 7 p.m., and so I said, well, I got to go watch the Nutcracker because I'm a father first, and then we'll figure all that stuff out. And then, I mean, as everybody understands in this business, things move incredibly fast. And so next thing you know, I'm on the Paul Finebaum show as the head coach of the SEC. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
How was the presentation of the Nutcracker Sunday afternoon?
Oh, my daughter is a star.
I owe you an apology for my call last week. I was a little testy. I didn't appreciate you mocking Alabama's 12th ranking. And, again, it was just one of them days.
Squirrel called in to apologize for something he did the other day, guys. He ended up making it worse.
Does he need to apologize again? Did anybody say that LSU's the new IT program of like moving forward? Are they not just enjoying success that LSU has this year?
You could just hear the bitterness coming through his veins. Listen, if you're an Alabama fan, it's not like you had anything taken away from you or stolen from you. I mean, you got beat twice. Get over it.
But I just heard Squirrel on your show, and I got to tell you, Paul, that man just filled up my cup. I'm talking the big gulp, super duper cup. And I just want to thank him.
Both being very camera shy, at least one in particular. How did you get them to loosen up and be authentic, which apparently comes off very, very true in this film?
Yes, I think it does. It's the most relaxed I've seen them on camera and most forthcoming in this sort of setting. And I think it was because we didn't make them uncomfortable by making it feel like a TV show.
Welcome back. We are here, and man, we got a lot to do today. Some really big guests. Let's continue with more calls. And Jody is up next. Hey, Jody.
Hey, Bob.
Hey there.
I got a comment for all those LSU people.
Yeah.
Nick Saban, he might be on the decline. He might be 6-8. But when he retired, Paul, Dabo's winning coming. So what they talking about? I don't understand it.
Well, first of all, I'm not sure Dabo is coming. Why would Dabo leave where he is, where he basically plays one tough game a year, maybe two?
Paul, you know Dabo went to Alabama.
I do know
Dabo
that.
Was a walk-on receiver. You know Dabo won national championship in 1992 at Roll Tide, Alabama. That's his dream job, Paul.
Yeah, maybe his dream job, Jody, but if he wins again this year, he's already won 3 national championships as a head coach. Why would he go to Alabama and have to deal with the comparisons to Nick Saban and Bear Bryant?
I don't think he had no comparisons, Paul. I think he's just walking his own steps and do his own thing.
Why would you tell me why you think Alabama is a better job than Clemson?
Come on, Paul. Man, you know it's a better job than Clemson.
I'm not sure it is.
They ain't got the resources and the money Alabama got.
Are you serious?
Yeah, you know Alabama and Auburn. That's our pro team in Alabama.
Have you ever been to Clemson?
Yes, I have.
Well, I have been there recently, and their facilities are equal to or better than Alabama.
Well, I mean, we could debate that all day, Paul, but
See, the difference, Jody, is you got your head buried in the 205, and sometimes you have to get outside the area code to see the rest of the world.
Oh, Paul, I do that every day, man.
I'm glad you do.
I do that every day. Yeah, I do that every day, Paul.
Well, try to get outside of Roll Tide Roll for a second. You might see there's a different world out there. Bob is in Ohio, and you're on the air. Hello, Bob.
Hey, Paul, how you doing? I'm David Deal's cousin. I talked to you the other day, and he told me you shouted out to him, by the way.
No doubt.
Which was cool. And I'm real quick. I want to tell you a real quick story before I go into ask you. I got a couple questions for you. But when his dad was alive, every Sunday I'd call him, and we'd talk in this order: Alabama, Auburn, Ohio State. It was fun. We had a great time. We would go back and forth for hours. But I really miss that, not being able to do that with him anymore. But the question I wanted to have for you, and what I called for, was you had the 3 coaching hires. Which one do you think was the best one in the SEC? Which hire do you think was the best?
You talking about between Lane,
right.
Pittman, and
Lane,
Eli? I think it's Lane Kiffin.
Do you think that's the best one?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just interested in your opinion there, because I think all of them are good, to tell you the truth. But I think that might be the best too. That's kind of what I was kind of leaning that way myself.
Well, you have in Lane Kiffin somebody who's now on his 5th head coaching job. The other 2 are Pittman's never been a coordinator, and Drinkwitz this is his 2nd head coaching job. I mean, I think Drinkwitz is a good choice. Young, inexperienced, but still.
The other day, he sounded good. Mm-hmm.
I thought he did a good job at his press conference, and when he came by here yesterday. We still haven't had a chance to talk to Pittman yet. We would like to. Right. I don't know what the deal there is.
About him.
No, I don't either.
Know much about him, but it'll be interesting to see. Okay, then one real quick thing. I got to throw the Buckeyes in here. I mean, they're a little bit of an underdog to Clemson, but do you think it's going to make a difference that Clemson hasn't played anybody really that good yet this year? That great, or that?
I tell you where I think it could make a difference. I mean, if they got behind in the game, they're not really battle tested this year, and I think sometimes that really does matter. Hey, thank you for the call. Billy is in Arkansas. Hey, Billy.
Hey, Paul. Love your show.
Thank you.
Watch it as many times as I can when I ain't working.
I appreciate that a lot.
I want you to clear something up for me, because I know you know more of the facts than I do. But what I'm hearing over here, by the way, I'm an Alabama fan, but I listen to these Arkansas fans. They were telling that what I'm hearing is that Lane Kiffin had the job with Arkansas. Then he turned around and went and interviewed at Ole Miss. They offered him X amount of dollars. Then he went back to Arkansas and told them, "Hey, I got a deal going here," and tried to get more money out of Arkansas, and that Arkansas had actually offered him more money to start with from the other deal, and he ended up signing with Ole Miss. Is there anything true to that, or what do you know?
Well, what I know is that is not true. Lane Kiffin was interviewed by Arkansas on the Sunday before the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And my indications are by Tuesday and Wednesday, he told them he didn't want the job.
So he really didn't want to go to Arkansas.
I do not believe Lane Kiffin wanted to go to Arkansas. Now, again, that's an opinion. That's an opinion based on reasonably good information.
As an Alabama fan, I agree with you. As an Alabama fan, I don't have anything against Arkansas, but, I mean, I would think I would want to go to Ole Miss too. Right now, I'd rather go to Ole Miss than Arkansas.
Well, first of all, Billy, Ole Miss has a really good quarterback, and I think that matters. Listen, second of all, Lane Kiffin is not negotiating for Lane Kiffin. Jimmy Sexton does that. So anyone who wants to say that Lane Kiffin took them for a ride is ridiculous. I heard that from some people. I don't believe it based on my interactions with the person that really matters here, and that's Lane Kiffin. Let's check in with Jason, who is in Mississippi.
How are you today, Paul?
I'm well. Thank you, Jason.
Are you getting tired of the ACC and Big Ten aggravating the heck out of us SEC fans?
Not at all.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Hey, look, I just wanted to say about that SEC championship game and all the highlights that are being shown. I don't understand why not one time did they show that 9-second drop back of Joe Burrow for that 45th touchdown.
Well, I didn't realize they hadn't shown it.
I haven't seen it one time in any of the highlights. I mean, just to talk about the O-line that has taken care of Joe Burrow all season. Another thing, I've heard a lot of beatdown on Jake Fromm, but, I mean, if you look at his first 5 passes, they all should have been caught. And, I mean, you work with some receivers over there. I mean, some quarterbacks. If I'm not mistaken, you can ask them after you throw passes that should be caught. At some point, you kind of lose confidence, don't you? I think Jake Fromm is an amazing quarterback.
Jason, that's a fair point. Hey, appreciate the call. We have to go to a break. More to come here on the program. Your phone calls will continue. We are going to head to our.
The only way I know how to fix something is to go to work. And I believe that you can recruit, and in recruiting, you're going to have to recruit your team that you have now. You have to recruit them to believe in what you're trying to get accomplished. You have to recruit the people that are going to come in to be part of the next team. You have to recruit coaches to come in. You know, since I got the job, I had over 400 or 500 text messages, and of those text messages, there's a lot of people in America that think about the Arkansas Razorbacks same way I do. And you might be shocked, you might not, to see some of the coaches that want to come here and be a part of Arkansas football and where they're at right now, and not unemployed, but great programs around the country. I've kind of always felt that way about Arkansas ever since I was a kid. And I want to tell you something. You guys were really good to me when I was here last time. You let me take my shoes off when I wanted to. Sometimes I'd take my socks off too, but y'all didn't seem to mind. You was good to me. I understand you're going to report like you need to report. I understand that too. But I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to hire a good football staff. We're trying to get them in as fast as we can. But to say I'm proud to be the head coach at Arkansas is an understatement. What we want is we want to be versatile. I love the RPO game. I like the quarterback read game. And I like 11, which 1 tight end, 3 wideouts. And I like to throw the flash screens and different things of that is into the RPO system. Again, when I was here the first time at Arkansas, we played bully ball. And it worked for us at times, and sometimes it didn't. It's like football. I think there's a time to bully people as well, but you better have the guys or you're going to try to bully somebody. So right now, it'd be more of a pin and pull, more of an RPO system, things where we can get angles in blocking and edges as fast as we can with either read style or pulling linemen to get out there.
We're back, and we've had a lot of people on. We had Lane Kiffin on Tuesday. Yesterday on Monday we had Lane Kiffin on. Yesterday we had Drinkwitz on. We still have not had Sam Pittman on. We are hoping to get him as soon as he comes in from the cold, or otherwise known as the recruiting trail. But we have somebody just as interesting, Josh Bertaccini. He hosts the #1 sports call-in show in Northwest Arkansas. He is the voice of Arkansas, and he joins us now. JB, great to have you on. Before we get into how Pittman has been received, can you tell us what transpired over the last couple of weeks with Hunter Yurachek after dumping Chad Morris, especially his process, because from a distance it seemed rather convoluted?
Yeah, absolutely. And great to be on with you, Paul, and happy holidays to you and all your listeners. And yeah, I think here we're grateful it's over. That's for sure. The search that you just brought up for Sam Pittman that took, can you believe, 4 weeks for Arkansas to find itself a head coach? And you asked me for what went on with Hunter Yurachek behind the scenes. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention to you the last time we talked a couple of weeks ago, all signs were pointing elsewhere. And so, did Arkansas end up getting the number 1, number 2, top 5 kind of candidate on their board? I don't think they got the top guy or two, but they certainly got somebody who wanted the job. And truthfully, this is a tough job right now, as you well know, and a job that is not in high demand for big-time coaches. So they probably didn't get their first or second choice, but they definitely got the guy who wanted the job more than anybody else.
Well, that's great. Who wouldn't want a $4 million a year job? But, JB, tell me this. Who did they target and what happened?
You and I went over some figures, some names. I think you're onto it as much as anybody, Paul. I think, Arkansas was interested in a guy like Lane Kiffin, who I thought, represented really well on your show, talking about his interest in Mississippi and a chance at the SEC again. And there's still some talk around here right now about what exactly went on behind the scenes. I heard a caller on your show just a little while ago who I think is privy to the same information I am, that Arkansas was deeply interested in Lane Kiffin and went pretty hard after him. And then, as you said yourself a few minutes ago, Paul, I'm hearing the same thing, that things didn't go much beyond that once we got into the middle of last week, it was very evident that Lane was not interested in Arkansas. And so what did that mean? That meant the Hogs were scrambling. And what they did was they went out and got a couple coaches some good raises. Matt Campbell at Iowa State, Mike Leach at Washington State. Both guys interviewed with Arkansas. Both guys got more money to stay put. And Arkansas ended up going after Sam Pittman, who, as you well know, was already an offensive line coach here for 3 years under Brett Bielema.
So they get Sam Pittman. We watched his news conference the other day. JB, I know you were there. I really didn't know what to make out of it through the lenses of television. Tell us what it was like inside that room.
It was interesting, Paul, and I've been to way more of these than I'd probably care to remember in the last few years with Razorback football. In fact, I was thinking about that the other day. 5 times now in the last decade I've been there where, a head hog was introduced and they spoke about how hopefully he'd be there forever. So, I mean, we've had this happen too often, and they've been stuck in a rut for all the reasons that you and I have discussed before. I thought Sam Pittman came in and, truthfully, he looked like a guy who was grateful for the opportunity to be a head coach finally. I thought you saw genuine emotion and enthusiasm. You saw some tears of happiness that I thought were real, and I thought that was a good moment. The folks in the room clearly on his side. Paul, he's got family throughout this area. He is one of those guys, folks in Arkansas, I mean, that's from Oklahoma originally, but folks in Arkansas would call Pittman a Razorback through and through. And if you look at what happened with him under Brett Bielema, a guy who tried to play, bully ball, big guy football at the line of scrimmage, and then when Sam Pittman left and went to Georgia and joined Kirby Smart, you saw how Georgia just descended on the offensive line, and Arkansas has been a disaster ever since. So Pittman pointed to that. He pointed to his recruiting. He pointed to wanting the job. I thought he looked a little bit tired, like a guy who'd probably been in a whirlwind for the last day or two, like he admitted he was. But, did he win the room? It's pretty hard not to on a day where folks are feeling more relief than anything. Clearly, though, and I'm sure we'll get into it here for a second or two, Paul, a lot of questions around Sam Pittman's hiring right now.
What are the biggest questions other than he has no experience as a coordinator or head coach?
Well, there you go. I mean, you're Paul Finebaum for a reason. You know what you're talking about. This guy has no experience as a head coach in Power One Division, Division I Power 5 football. He hadn't been a head coach since Hutchinson Community College in Western Kansas, which, let's be real, is a quality JUCO kind of program. But that was 25 years ago. I've had folks this week on our morning show that you were kind enough to bring up, Paul, mention how they think he was a great high school coach in the early 1990s. It's almost, we're talking 30 years ago. Let's get real here. He doesn't have that experience. So what happens in games when he's got to make decisions with everything on the line and he's learning on the fly, and he's not learning on the fly for a program that has any kind of margin for error? Because, as you know, Arkansas has gone 7-29 in the last 3 years. So it's been a rough go of it. The inexperience is a concern with him. I think you wonder about his ability to put his staff together. We're going to find out more and more by the day here what happens in that regard. He hired Brad Davis and gave Arkansas fans at least a glimpse into what he's going to do on the offensive line by getting Missouri's OL coach to join him just yesterday, but nothing else yet. We don't know who the offensive coordinator is or the defensive coordinator. And for a guy who has no experience, as you point out, he's going to have to make home run hires on that staff to lift himself up and give himself a chance.
I mean, I just, listen, without having talked to him personally, I don't know much about him. I don't want to prejudge from the press conference, but JB, you were at Chad Morris's, and just because he won the press conference, he obviously didn't win anything else. Bielema was a real personality. We both know that. Petrino was not much of a personality, but he was a great coach. I'm not saying I'm troubled by it, but it just seemed rather lethargic.
That's a fair word. I've heard some folks around here say he was, fatigued, kind of came across like he was a little bit in a daze. And again, I think he was. I think Sam Pittman's got to come on your show, Paul. I mean, that's a spot he needs to be on. He needs to politic for Razorback football, and he's going to do that way better, of course, than a guy like me even should try to do here. But I have the same concerns you do. I mean, you and I are on the same page here. And I think at the end of the day, if you're going to look at this in the right context, you have to be 100% real, and Hog fans are going to kill me for saying this, but it's the truth. You have to be 100% real about the fact that you are not a sexy job right now. You're a job that has destroyed careers, and I was talking with our mutual friend Dale Daniels about this just the other day. There's almost no track record of coaches who've come to Arkansas and use this as a springboard to better things in their careers. So that kind of rumor of Coach Killer you that you hate to see is hanging out there right now. I don't truthfully know who else they could have gotten. So you could question the hire, and I think you're right to do it.
JB, hold on a second. I mean, Mike Leach's name came up. What happened to that?
I don't know.
I mean, seems like, had Leach been hired, that was a pretty dynamic hire compared to Sam Pittman. Don't you agree?
I think Leach would have been exciting. I think Lane Kiffin, who I talked, excitedly about on your show a couple of weeks ago, I think he would have been a good fit. I think Hunter Yurachek wanted a guy like that, but at the end of the day, look, they just couldn't get him. And Arkansas is paying two coaches not to coach here right now. I know Chad Morris just joined forces with Gus Malzahn at Auburn, but that's not going to cover his $4 million a year buyout. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, Paul. I wish I could paint it prettier than that, but that's where they're at right now, and they just have to hope that Sam Pittman turns out to be, I keep hearing, the next Ed Orgeron. We'll see about that one.
Josh, how did they get to Pittman? Because, listen, if the two of us were in charge of the Arkansas coaching search and we get turned down by Leach or Lane or Norvell, who was nowhere near the job, I doubt we would have gone to Georgia to find the offensive line coach. What led Hunter Yurachek to there, other than the fact that he worked at Arkansas, which is the only commonality I can come up with?
It's a great question. And I try to think back to the Chad Morris hire and how Mike Norvell, by all accounts, really wanted the job a couple of years ago. And, of course, he hadn't had that incredible back-to-back seasons he's just had at Memphis. But whatever happened there, they rubbed each other the wrong way. He was not interested, like you said, this time around. And with Florida State calling, why would you be? So he wasn't there. The Gus Malzahn thing has just been star-crossed. It's never happened. He wins just enough that the folks at Auburn, put up with him, and he puts up with them. He's making $7 million a year. I would too. So that hasn't happened, even though you would think it makes sense. You brought up Leach. I brought up Campbell's extension. He didn't want the job. Paul, I don't know who wants the job right now. Sam Pittman has family here. He enjoyed his time here. He appreciates Northwest Arkansas. It's a nice place to live. I think they did the best they could, given they were stuck between a rock and a hard place. But you don't need me to tell you how to do your show. I think you're asking a lot of great questions right now about Hunter Yurachek and his search that I unfortunately cannot answer for you firsthand.
Okay, let's forget all these questions and let's try to weed out the fans who would be supportive of anyone for that matter. It doesn't matter whether it's Sam Pittman or son of Sam. What has been the reaction on your show the last two mornings?
We got a good audience in the mornings. The people are constructive so far, I think, in their dialogue. There's a couple different political camps. You're going to get the rabid diehards, the 25, 30,000 folks who are still going to the games at the end of the year, and they're all telling you it's the greatest hire since sliced bread, which, frankly, for the reasons you laid out, doesn't even make sense to me right now. Down the road, who knows what happens, but right now I don't see how you can feel so confident in that statement. But, man, they're passionate, and so they're ready for this thing to just move on. They're going to get destroyed in recruiting, Paul. Sam Pittman said that at the press conference you brought up. They have no chance of putting together a high-level recruiting class, let alone a decent one right now. So I think folks they're just hoping he can pull some rabbits out of a hat, get through it, take their losses this year, and then hopefully hire some good coordinators. That's what we're all waiting for right now. Can you hire a big-time offensive coordinator to give an identity to your offense? Can you bring in anybody better than John Chavis, who ended up at Tulane today? What a disaster. He was here for 2 years. There's some talk, Paul, that Barry Odom and Sam Pittman are really good friends, and I don't know if that's a move Barry Odom wants to make, but what an upgrade that would be if they could get him on defense. So I think folks are trying to be optimistic, and then guys like me are skeptical, because guys like me and you, Paul, this is what we're paid to do, and he's going to have to show me that he can make some magic happen. But, hey, it's better for me if he does, right? So I'm hoping he does.
Thank you, Josh. JB, great to have you on. Hopefully you'll be back soon. Good deal. We will talk to you next week, I hope.
Always appreciate your honesty, Paul. Thank you, sir.
And by the way, I do remember Pittman, I think, saying that he initiated the contact at his press conference a couple of days ago. Anyway, maybe he did. Maybe Hunter Yurachek could call us and tell us how he came up with Sam Pittman. We're back with more.
For Dan Mullen in Florida to get 11 wins, who would have thought, again, going back 2 years ago when he took that program over, it was in such disarray. But this guy came in, won 10 last year, won a huge game in the bowl last year. Now has a chance to get Virginia and his 11th win. And I just love where Kyle Trask has gone in this offense. Let's remember, he was a backup at the beginning of the year. He goes and he takes over the quarterback position after an injury to Felipe Franks, and wow, he's been amazing. Boy, they've got some talented receivers. I mean, you look around, Kyle Pitts this year, who became their leading receiver, has showed up out of nowhere to be an unbelievable target for Kyle Trask. I love Todd Grantham, the defenses he dials up. I think this is an incredible opportunity for them to go out on the road recruiting and say, look, we won 10 our first year, 11 our next year, and the next thing is SEC championship.
The only ranked matchup of the three matchups between the two conferences, right? So you got Virginia just clinging on at 24. And then, of course, a Florida team that many contended was maybe the best team in the East Division had a tough draw out of the West. They got to play LSU every year. Just a fantastic job that they were able to do opposite a really good defense, having go to your backup quarterback in Kyle Trask.
Yeah, and important to remember, too, that Florida's couple of losses are really good losses against really good teams. That being said, what do you think is maybe the biggest challenge for these SEC teams as they take on a couple out of the ACC?
I think distraction. That's a big piece of it, and we'll talk about this throughout this month, but it's not only players trying to make decisions as to whether or not they want to continue to compete at the collegiate level, but the other piece of it, too, is from a coaching staff standpoint. When you have success, other programs are going to want to come and take a look at who's coaching, who's developing these players, who's recruiting these players. And if you're smart, you would want to emulate and maybe even borrow from these programs that have enjoyed a great deal of success. That's why what has happened at Clemson is so unique, the fact they've kept that staff intact for so long. But I think the possibility for distraction is one of the biggest issues heading into bowl seasons, more so now than any other time. It makes the conference comparison thing really challenging, because we won't necessarily see the team that we saw in the regular season in the postseason, I think, because of some of the potential departures.
Well, what's interesting about the matchups against these ACC teams, that all three teams from the SEC that are playing these ACC teams ought to come in with a great mindset. They all came off great wins at the end of the season. Mississippi State winning the Egg Bowl. Florida, the way they destroyed Florida State. These teams are coming off. Kentucky, look what they did to Louisville.
Yeah.
Absolutely destroyed Louisville. These guys, this team may say, these three teams are probably going in going, I just want to play one more game with my guys.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because they ended on such a powerful note. Because what you're saying is true, Stench. I mean, the problem is that the college football playoff has created a scenario where sometimes when you get to these games, they don't become as important to the players, even though they are to the fans and everybody else.
Welcome back, and we are taking your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Let's go to Kyle next in Mississippi. Kyle, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you, Paul?
I'm well. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, hey, I was just calling. I'm in between both Alabama and LSU, and I got to give props to LSU this year. They have done some remarkable things, but everybody keeps talking about how Nick Saban is either getting old or, hey, he might be on his downfall. I mean, what other program in the United States would not want Nick Saban as their head coach? The guy's brought 5 national titles to Alabama. He's had, I think might be his second year where he's not.
Hey,
ranked,
Kyle,
Kyle,
let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
And I listen. I've been on the Nick Saban greatest coach of all time train for a long time. But when you're talking about present and future, the past is important, but it doesn't always factor in as the overbearing or overwhelming and most important thing. So when you look at Nick Saban, you can't really get hung up on what he's done. All you can do is think about what can he do now. And I know that sounds very capitalistic, but that's the bottom line. So at 68, Nick Saban isn't going anywhere other than Alabama. He might consider an NFL job one day. But more than likely, he's either going to coach at Alabama for X number of years, or he's going to walk away and do something else.
Right, and I agree, and you're absolutely right. But the point I was trying to make was that people just seem to they're kind of down on the guy. The guy's done great things for not just Alabama, but everywhere he's been. He's a great recruiter, and I really don't think that let me rephrase that. I think people need to look at that. The guy's still a recruiting person.
Well, listen, I mean, Alabama right now is currently ranked number 2 in recruiting. That's pretty amazing. They haven't really been outside the top 2 or 3 in 11 years. So I don't know if anybody watched. I watched about half of it last night. I'm going to finish it later in the week. The Saban Belichick HBO special that we had the producer on yesterday. I mean, it's really interesting to watch those two guys converse unfiltered. And if anyone saw it, I'd be anxious to get your reaction. Let's continue. James is in Baton Rouge. Hey, James.
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Hey, this is the first time call. I just had a couple of things. I've been talking to a friend of mine. He's lives in Birmingham. He's from Leeds, Alabama. Actually grew up with Charles Barkley. But anyway, he's a recovering Alabama fan. And I talked to him after the LSU-Alabama game, and he was like, he wanted LSU to beat him more than the 5 points that he did, because he said these Alabama fans are so, you just don't know how cruel they are, put it like that. Anyway, my thing is this. It's like over the years, Alabama's had a nice run going. And who's to say it's not ending now? I'm not saying that. But with me, whoever is in the championship, it's not about the team. Listen, if your team couldn't make it to the championship, say Alabama, Auburn, or Florida, whatever gets there, I'm pulling for them because it's about the conference. I'm not necessarily pulling for them because I'm a fan of theirs, but I am a fan of the SEC. So that's what I wanted to say about that. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm glad to hear from you. I hate to run. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Number of guests will be dropping by, including Matt Rule. We've already had JB on from Fayetteville, Vince Thompson a little bit later on, Chris Lowe on a couple of days with Lane Kiffin. More of your phone calls.
Not necessarily in the works, but it was almost like a given. If Kenny Dillingham, Auburn's offensive coordinator, if he was going to leave, which certainly seemed very possible when Mike Norvell's name from Memphis started coming up for head coaching gigs, we kind of knew, and from talking to people, that if that were to happen, the first person Gus Malzahn would go after would be Chad Morris, his close friend who he's known since 2004. And I mean, as soon as I heard that Dillingham was leaving, I'm not kidding you, within like 10 minutes, I got a call saying, hey, the job is Chad Morris's, and they just got to work out the deal, and it's just a matter of time. And sure enough, about 24 hours later, they put pen to paper and got it all done. Yeah, I would be shocked if Gus Malzahn comes out and says, hey, I'm giving up play calling again, and flip-flops on that. I think it's going to be more of the same of what you saw this year. He's going to continue calling plays, but I think the difference with this hire is that he probably will be more willing to listen and implement ideas from Chad Morris than, say, maybe any of his other offensive coordinators he's ever had, including Rhett Lashley, Chip Lindsey, and Kenny Dillingham this past season. I don't think he's going to say, hey, Chad, you call the plays this season. I think Gus wants to continue to do that. I think they're going to try and work on improving their passing game because it's obvious that the passing game has become the strength of this offense under Bo Nix, and they've got to get things a little bit more complex with their passing scheme to be able to move the ball down the field and score more points, which they kind of struggled with this season. Yeah, I haven't really heard anything about him seriously considering leaving. I think he's pretty comfortable at Auburn. His contract runs through, I think, 2021. I foresee him fulfilling that contract at the very least. And I think he's in a spot now where, one, I don't think he wants to leave to go be a head coach and try and build a program, so to speak. But two, if he were to be a head coach again, I think that maybe potentially that could be at Auburn someday, potentially. Let's say if things went completely south this past season, I think Kevin Steele would have been given a really hard look as a potential, not just interim coach, but potentially as the full-time coach. And I think he'd be willing to do that. But having said all that, I think he's happy being a defensive coordinator right now. I'd be surprised if anything changes between now and, the next signing day in February.
Welcome back. Second hour is live, and we are underway. A number of guests to come, a number of awards going on. This is the week of all the awards. The big event tomorrow night in Atlanta, then obviously the Heisman. So far, these are voted on by the SEC coaches. Burrow and Brown taking the top two awards. Waddle, special teams. Bo Nix over Stingley for Freshman of the Year. Blankenship, Scholar Athlete. Thomas, blocking. Ogeron, Coach of the Year. No surprises there. Joey, standing in front of Johnny, won the Golden Arm. Big award there in Louisville. Matt Rule coming up shortly. Vince Thompson and Chris Lowe among the guests. Meanwhile, there's speculation that Steve Adazio is going to get the Colorado State job. Butch Jones and Aranda had both been mentioned for that one. And Bruce Feldman reporting that Willie Taggart is going to replace Lane Kiffin at FAU. Let's get back to the calls at 855-242-7285. James is calling next. Hey, James.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul.
Hey there.
I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on the Nick Saban debate or semi-debate. I think he's going to stay because he's not going to want to go out and this kind of season, having lost to Auburn, been down in the polls and in the committee and not making the championship.
Well, no, I don't think Nick Saban's going to leave. Listen, he missed last year in the championship game. This year he didn't get to the championship. And I think Nick Saban's pretty motivated to keep coming back. Now,
I agree. But I do hope one thing. I hope his health is good because during the Iron Bowl, I was swore he was going to have a stroke any minute.
He did look a little bit agitated. Hey, thanks for the call. Red Dog is calling next. Hey, Red Dog.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Hey, listen, all this talk about, obviously LSU is just, dominated everyone. But I wonder, what's your thoughts about how are they going to be, without Burrow? Because, it's one thing to say, to assess the offense and say, it's just been something that no one can. But I've watched a lot of ESPN reports about Burrow, and he's just, he's phenomenal. He's like Brady. So do you think that they will be so good without him? Even if they hate the same thing, do you think that they will be?
Well, no. Listen. This guy's a generational player. He may be one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen. So the answer is no. But it doesn't mean that LSU will take a major step backwards. Their defense is good, getting better. They still have a lot of playmakers on offense. They've got 2 or 3 young freshmen who are outstanding. They're having a really great recruiting class. They just need to come up with a solution at quarterback, which is not easy to do sometimes.
Well, particularly at LSU, right? I mean,
Well, it's particularly everywhere. Alabama's had a run of 2 great quarterbacks in a row, but before that, they had a couple of bad years. Even though they won a national championship during one of those years with a graduate transfer who nobody thought was fantastic, he was certainly good enough. You don't have to have Joe Burrow, a Heisman candidate, to win. You just need somebody that's capable. And with Joe Brady there, you're probably going to have a step up on some programs. Hey, great to have you on. Eugene is in Louisiana. Eugene, thank you for calling.
Hey, Paul.
Hey there, buddy.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate watching your show. And my question is like an opinion. I would like to know who you think is the best team in the playoff picture.
I think it's LSU. My second team would be Ohio State. I know a lot of people are saying, well, what about Clemson? Well, what about Clemson? They're ranked 3rd for a reason.
Right, because I'm staying with a good friend of mine who is a Boomer Sooner, and I would pull for Oklahoma on Saturdays, but I think we'll have a split house come here on the 28th.
I agree with you, Eugene. Hey, listen, thank you very, very much. Really nice of you to call. A number of guests to come, including Matt Rule. Hank is up next. Hey, Hank.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Paul.
Thank you very much.
First of all, I was about spit my drink out when you was talking about Les Miles. Man, I never was a Les Miles fan. He won the BCS championship with Saban's players, and I never was a fan. Poor clock management, and that was hilarious. But I just wanted to give a shout out to all my friends for Florida, Georgia, Auburn, and the cordial Alabama friends, and a shout out to my buddies that are watching right now at the Foley Fire Department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Scotty is in Florida. Hey, Scotty, you're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hey, Paul. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Well, I enjoy your show, but last night I really enjoyed the Belichick-Saban segment on HBO. It gave an insight to 2 men who have worked very hard most of their lives, and you got to see a side of them that you don't usually see. And it was very interesting.
Yeah, I was really, listen, I know Saban pretty well. I don't know Bill Belichick, but I found Belichick to be a very likable guy. I mean, awkward, but very likable. I mean, he just, I can't remember which, I think it was a story about his dad, there, and I only saw half of it, so I'm gonna finish it tomorrow night when I get back in town. But
the second half of it was showing the more personal side where they were giving gave their daughter away at a wedding, and
oh wow,
you don't ever see that on the sideline, any aspect of that whatsoever. And I was just so glad that they did that.
Well, listen, I am too, and I mean, I think it was Belichick's story about his dad early on in the documentary that was just so funny. And listen, they're both awkward guys, but think about I've done a lot of interviews with people, and they with cameras around, and you tell them to ignore the cameras, but that's not easy to do. But I thought they did a fantastic job. Hey, thank you very much. Jimmy in Chicago is up next.
Hey, Paul. Yeah, one of your LSU fans called earlier in the show, and he mentioned something that I certainly noticed in the SEC championship game, and he was talking about the field. And I know, and I was very, felt bad to learn that Blaylock kid, the wide receiver for Georgia, he tore his ACL. And he was going up for a pass and came down, and Danielson was all over it. As soon as the play was over, he noted how the field turf had given, which forced, you could see it caused his, leg to kind of bend at a really bad angle. And the previous caller talked about Edwards-Helaire slipped 3 or 4 times. And I'm just wondering, you think that might be a concern to the NCAA people as coming into this semifinal game, because not only slipping, but the fact that, it's already been proven, there's certainly a chance for injury, and you don't want any of these players that have long-term prospects to suffer a really serious injury.
No, totally. I agree.
And I saw a report today in Breitbart. It was from the Advocate, and I was just wondering if Alabama politicians have as much passion for the college game as Louisiana. It's saying that approximately 95 out of 105 state representatives and 38 of 39 state senators in Louisiana took advantage of the perk that the state allows politicians to buy postseason tickets for either the SEC championship game, Peach Bowl, or a potential national championship game. 95 out of 100 and 38 of 39. And they said that 24 House members and 20 state senators have already bought end zone tickets for the national championship game. Did you have much knowledge of the?
Yeah, I remember having covered games in Louisiana and walking through the press box. It seemed like every state legislator had his own box. Can you imagine, though, Jimmy, how difficult tickets are going to be if it's LSU in New Orleans, which I think it's going to be?
Okay, yeah, and it did. I think it said here, and I mentioned this to you, and I always forget to ask you before you talk to Bill Hancock, because we've talked about this a few times about the just ridiculous face value prices of these national championship tickets. It says that they range, the median price is around $650 just face value for the championship game, and up to $900, and now it's even up to $175 to $300 just for the SEC championship. I mean, golly, these fans, financially, they make a lot of sacrifices, and then in the playoff, sometimes you have to decide and gamble that you hope your team wins in the semifinals.
But let me say, Jimmy, this is so much easier than last year when Alabama had Miami and San Jose or Santa Clara. I mean, this is as good as it gets if you're an LSU fan now. And really, for most fans in the field, even Oklahoma, it's not that bad. But I've been booking my flights, and it's a piece of cake compared to last year, which was pretty much a nightmare trying to get out to California. The prices were outrageous. Hey, thanks for the call. We are heading to a break. More to come, including Matt Rule. Your phone calls are next.
Alabama win on the road was huge, and I know Tua was banged up, and they had a young defense, but to really, to get over that hump, they beat us 8 years in a row. That was just such a huge victory for us to go through Tuscaloosa and do it that way this year. And we've got a lot of upperclassmen. We had four guys come back on the offensive line. We've got all these weapons all over the field, and to be a good quarterback, you're only as good as the people around you. And Burrows had the luxury of having not only a great play caller with the addition of Joe Brady, Ensminger and Brady really kind of co-coordinating the thing. Kind of reminds me of Kiffin and Sark. My brother played at SC under Pete Carroll, and they had that kind of a two-headed monster out there when things were going good. And, Brady's just brought a huge offensive element to, this team, which is loaded with upperclassmen and weapons galore. So that's been the funnest part of it. It's fun to watch these games. When we used to watch LSU go, 3 yards, a cloud of dust, backfield stuff, double tight stuff, but now we can actually score some points, and it's a ton of fun. Well, just the evolution of the spread for sure. Giving him the opportunity to be dynamic opens up a lot of different throws for him, quick throws, deep throws. We're in 4 wide, 5 wide receiver sets. I love when we motion Clyde Edwards out of the backfield, and he's won some one-on-one battles out there running routes too. And when he is in the backfield, we get him the ball as well. And so you have to cover really every blade of grass against them. And he ran this offense in high school. He ran it under Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer's a buddy of mine. He's told me a lot about it before he ever came to really be the player that he is at LSU. And He said, man, he's such a gifted leader. You know, he's got some eludeability. That's a word, I guess, that not a lot of people would use. But pocket presence is unbelievable, quick release, timing, and accuracy. But it's all, you know, the anticipation's there. He's got all the weapons, like I said. But being in this offense it's got to be so much fun for him. A year ago, you know, I think in the red zone he threw 5 touchdowns all year. This year he's thrown 28. I mean, so we're spreading it out and finding weaknesses in defenses where LSU's never done that before, and so we're utilizing our strengths is what we're doing.
Welcome back. We are here, and Coach Rule coming up in a few minutes. Live in New York on this Wednesday afternoon. Squirrel is up next.
Man, I got to get up to New York. It's been too long since I've been up there.
Come on up.
You know, Paula, you know, obviously I upset a lot of people yesterday, a lot of LSU people, and, you know, that bothers me. And first of all, I want to apologize to those people. But, you know, I heard several negative calls after I hung up, and Twitter was brutal. I mean, one lady wished that she said she hopes that I choke on a nut. So, you know, that's an evil form there. But I did a lot of self-reflection over the evening and thought about what you guys said. And I've kind of come full circle. You know, I think LSU is obviously a dynasty now, and they are the destination location. And, you know, I want to be a lot of people come on here and predict that they would win the national championship, but I want to be the first one on your show to actually congratulate them for winning the 2019 championship. And I want to congratulate them for the 2020 and the 2021, the 2022, 2023. And the only question I have for you, when you're going back and you're looking at a dynasty, does the dynasty start like the first game of the year, like against Georgia Southern, or would it have started against Alabama, or does it start after they you know, dominated Clemson or Ohio State? When does a dynasty start for a program?
You know, Squirrel, I can't participate in this pettiness. I'm just going to have to sit this one out.
Thank you for taking my call. Aloha.
Thank you. Squirrel just cannot get over the fact that LSU has moved ahead of his Crimson Tide, can he? I'm baffled by him. Gene is in Louisiana. Hello, Gene.
Hey, Paul, how you doing? Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
I'm about the 6th-time caller, first time getting through.
I'm glad you made it.
I just want to say that I'm LSU purple and gold. I bleed purple and gold. I had season tickets in 1958, 59, and 60. And I was 10 years old. I skipped going to Halloween to go out and watch LSU play Ole Miss and see Billy Cannon's run.
Oh, my goodness. I wish I had seen that.
And then I happened to be there the night of the earthquake game. I was sitting at the top of the stadium with my back against the wall, and I thought the stadium was going to come down.
I bet. That is amazing.
Anyway, I want to talk about the perfect storm that brought Orgeron to LSU.
Okay, sure.
You know, he was at LSU early in defense, and he was hired at Ole Miss. And thank goodness Ole Miss didn't give him much time to set up a program, and they got rid of him. And then he went to USC as a defensive coordinator, and he got interim coach halfway through the year, and he went 4-2. And I said, well, man, he's going to get the job out there. And thank goodness they were stupid enough to bring in Sarkisian.
They were.
So Orgeron came back to Baton Rouge, and he's always been a great recruiter in Louisiana. And I was hoping he'd get the job, and then they started talking about Jimbo Fisher. And Jimbo Fisher, his program was going down at Florida State. I don't care what you say.
It was.
And thank goodness Texas A&M gave him a fortune to go over there. And then they were talking about Tom Herman, and thank goodness Texas wanted him. So it ended up Orgeron got it by default. And he's done such a good job, he stayed. And I've been following his career for a long time because he was one of the best recruiters LSU ever had. But just the perfect storm of how he got to LSU.
No, it really is amazing, and I'll give Joe Oliva credit for staying the course. He could have paid the price for Herman, who was the hottest coach in the country, and he chose not to. And Herman went to Texas, which, let's be honest, has not been a good experience.
No, I don't think it has. I think we got the best coach out of the three, to tell you the truth.
Well, at least for now you did. You're absolutely. Well, no, I mean, listen. Sometimes, unanswered prayers, unintended consequences. Take your pick on whatever quotation you want. Hey, thank you very much for the call. Matt Rule coming up shortly. Garrett is in Atlanta. Hello, Garrett. Good afternoon to you.
Hello, Paul. Thank you for taking my call. I got
Thanks
two
a lot.
quick questions. I'll be very succinct. Why was the committee so enamored with Georgia? Jake Fromm's been a pedestrian quarterback since Florida. LSU hung 37 on them, and they had a terrible loss to South Carolina. I'd like to get your opinion on how you think they finished fifth.
I have no earthly idea, and to me, they didn't deserve to be fifth. They, after a loss like that, I would have moved someone up. Whether I'm trying to remember who was next, Oregon or Florida or someone like that. But I guess they gave Georgia credit for playing in a championship game and losing by 25 points or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very curious. Hey, the other item I want to speak about, have you heard anything? I saw an article from a Sports Illustrated reporter or a contributor that talked about Alabama had a team meeting, and there's talking about several juniors possibly coming back for next year, that McMillan, Dylan Moses, Henry Ruggs. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, listen, I've read that, but right now I'm maybe it's the old journalist in me, but I don't put a lot of stock in anything until reality. I mean, it's one thing to have a team meeting. It's one thing to say, hey, we're all coming back. First of all, I don't know who's going to be in these bowl games yet. Do you?
I don't, and I think that's a great question, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Saban handles that.
Well, he's got to be careful because the most important thing for Nick Saban is recruiting and to sending the right message out, and he can't come off too heavy-handed because he knows these guys have a big future ahead of them, and I have no doubt that he will recommend them getting a draft grade before they make a determination. I was with a couple of former NFL players and college players this morning on the Mike Greenberg show, and none of them felt like anyone in the first three rounds should play in a bowl game. There's just no upside. There's nothing to be gained. Poodle is up next. Good afternoon. Did not hear Poodle bark. How about Johnny in Arkansas? Hey, Johnny.
Hey, Paul, thanks for taking my call. First time caller. I really enjoy listening to all the different personalities that call in the show.
Thank you.
Just one quick comment from you, please. Sunday, the wife and I decided we was going to go to the Tennessee game, to their bowl game.
Right.
And I said all day, hey, we're not going to jump the gun. We're going to wait. We're going to wait. We're going to wait. And there was several sports sites that had Tennessee playing Louisville in the Music City Bowl in Nashville. So we jumped on the internet and got tickets to go to Nashville to watch Tennessee and Louisville play. And I had no more got the tickets bought, and it comes out with a twist to the bowl game. I was just wondering if anybody else has called in and said anything about them jumping the gun too early, and I'll hang up and listen to your comment.
Yeah, listen, all I can say is I'm sorry that happened. You have to be careful. I know the Bowls changed teams quite a few times. And by the way, I don't think they've gotten their draft grades yet, but they have a pretty good idea where they are. We are heading to a break. Matt Rule coming. Welcome back to our program. We are live in New York today, and it's great to have you with us. And it's the awards season, and certainly our next guest getting a lot of coaching awards, but that's not what he's about. He's about his team and the amazing turnaround at Baylor. Truly one of the most remarkable, I think, in college football history. Coach Matt Rule rejoins us. He was with us about a month ago. Coach, thanks so much for your time. I know it's a crazy week with recruiting and getting ready for the holidays and bowl games. But congratulations on your year.
Thank you very much for saying that. We're proud of what we did, and hope we can get one more here in a couple of weeks.
Listen, I know there's a little bit of disappointment losing the way your team did, but I thought your congratulations to Oklahoma. Listen, I know that's it's expected on one level, but a lot of coaches don't go to the extreme that you did by making that so public. You mind talking about that for a second, because it really showed what this is all about.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Lincoln Riley, and I have a lot of respect for those players on that team. And when we lost that game, Paul, it was like someone puts their hand in your chest and rips your heart out. Don't I'll be gracious, but I can tell you that hurt, and it hurt our team, and it hurt our players. But I think it's my job as a coach to be classy at all times, and to show our guys what it means to be a true competitor. And I grew up playing for Coach Paterno. I'm one of those guys. I grew up respecting the great coaches, the Vince Lombardis, the Bear Bryants, and they didn't engage in that stuff. They were classy. They were gentlemen coaches. And I think for me and the generation of coaches that are here now, we have to protect the game, and we have to do things the right way. And so congratulating them, I would have rather that they had to congratulate us, but congratulating them just seems like the right thing to do for the game and for young people.
And what does it mean, Coach, to get this program not only to the success? I mean, you had College Game Day, you had the eyes of the nation on you so many different times, but you're going to the Sugar Bowl, which where I grew up in the South was really the ultimate reward for a really good season.
Well, that's a bucket list item for me. I was a Penn State fan, 1982 season. They went down and played Georgia and Herschel Walker and won that game and won the national championship. And so much is made now. You hear this kid's not playing in the bowl game, that kid's not playing in the bowl game, and everybody has their own story. I'm not here to judge anyone, but there's 115 other guys on that team that are dying to get to that game. And I think for us, the chance to go out and, we talk so much about what you can get, and can you get into the college football playoff? Can you win this? It's always about the tangible rewards, but this is a game that people say they love. And if you love to compete, I mean, what greater end to a season would there be than to go to the Sugar Bowl and play a team like Georgia? For me to have a chance to coach against Kirby Smart, if you're a competitor, you love that. You live for that. And so I couldn't be happier for our team. Obviously we wish we would have won that game, but this is a fitting end to a great year, and we just hope that we can find a way to play well.
I want to pick up on that because I was on a program this morning, Coach, on ESPN with several NFL players, former NFL players, and they all said the same thing, that if they were a top draft choice, they wouldn't play in a bowl game. I know you understand that. You've coached in the NFL, but I would like to hear you explain the conundrum that many players face right now, though, because of the risk of injury versus the reward, like you said, of going to a big-time game.
Yeah, I think the guys that are absolutely, definitely guaranteed to be in the top 10, top 15, I can certainly understand them saying, Coach, I'm nervous about playing in this game. But I don't ever hear anyone saying, hey, we're going to sit out, the first game of the year against, Abilene Christians. What's the difference? It's the same game. And so, I understand it. If a player comes to me and says it, I would support them 100%. But there's a lot of other players that aren't going to be, first-round picks, that aren't top tier. And I think the hardest thing that I'm learning is I help these guys is they have so many people telling them, hey, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. And there's only so many spots. And so I think if you're guaranteed it, I understand it. But you know what? I think you're going to look back someday and you're going to remember the games that you played. You're not going to remember the games you didn't play in. And the money comes and goes, but really college football is your last time to ever really be on a true team and to go play with your boys. And so I'll support guys no matter what, but I love when I see guys come out there and play that last game with their teammates in the bowl game. I think it's really special.
Talking to Coach Matt Roll. Coach, you mentioned Coach Paterno, and I know you grew up in the New York area. You gravitated to Penn State, and I'm saddened, and I know you are even more than I, that there's so many people either want to ignore the legacy of Joe Paterno or tiptoe around it. But knowing him a little bit, and always proud to go to that school to cover games when I was covering Alabama, and his relationship with Coach Bryant and others. What was it like to be in his influence and to be a part of that program?
Well, he was as tough as they came. I mean, he would push you and he would drive you to be the very best, but he expected you to be great at everything in your life. And I understand where people are coming from. They're trying to go back and think through what happened, what didn't happen. Here's all I know: there are hundreds and thousands of players just like me that played for Coach Paterno, whose lives are better for having been there. And I don't know what happened, later after I was gone. I don't know what happened in some room or some conversation, but I do know that during my time there, every decision he made was always about the player and was always about doing things the right way and to win with honor. And so I was lucky to play for him. He was as charismatic a man as I've ever been around. He would say something to the team before we went out to play, and it was before we actually left and went to the stadium. I remember we played Ohio State. They had Eddie George, a great football team, and he called us into the team room before we headed over to the stadium. We're still at our facility, and he went off and he said, "I'm tired of hearing about them. Let's talk about us and let's talk about our team." And it was so passionate. Our team went out there and played probably our best game that we ever played up until that point. And he just had a way to motivate people and had a personality that made you want to play for him, and I certainly miss him.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, but we've all watched you, some of the turnarounds that you've been a part of and have been the head coach at Temple and now this Baylor. And listen, you obviously know what you're doing and you've been quite successful, but what type of approach do you take? I mean, you took over a desperate situation. A lot of us, let's be honest, thought you were crazy to take the Baylor job.
I think I just think that I wasn't really afforded. My first opportunity was at Temple, where I had been, turned the corner, and I think when you're making these decisions, when you're going to go find which program you want to go to, you have to make sure that they understand the way that you're going to do it, and that your path, your process is in line with the athletic director, with the president. And I had an athletic director, Mac Rhodes, that said, "Hey, I want you to do it the right way." And so, I took that opportunity, and it wasn't easy, but we've gotten to a certain point and knocked on the door this year of winning the championship and couldn't quite do it. And that's really what happened my third year at Temple. College game day came to Temple. We went to the championship game. We lost the championship game and came back the next year and found a way to win it. So, but I tell you what, it's been hard, but when you look back in hindsight, it was certainly rewarding what we've done, and I'm hopeful that we can just keep growing as a program and take a couple more steps.
I know the school went to great lengths, Coach Rule, to make sure you were protected with a long-term contract in case it didn't work out immediately. Of course, that wasn't all that long ago, and now naturally your name comes up for a lot of jobs, especially NFL jobs. In terms of how you view all that, I know there are representatives that deal with suitors, but I mean, how do you approach the future, knowing that after what you've done here and have done at Temple, you're very much in demand?
Well, I think the first thing I always try to do is be really, really honest and transparent with everybody and my players, right? So, I can't always comment, outside, but I always tell my players the truth, because the minute they feel like I'm not, if I'm going to talk to them about whether they're going to play in a bowl game or not, or come out early for the draft, then they better be able to ask me, "Coach, hey, what's going on with you?" And so I think that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is I love college football. I mean, I think you can tell, like, I have great reverence for this part of the game. And so I think I'm probably a fit to stay there. But when NFL teams have called me in the past, sometimes they label it as an interview. But I think there's, you kind of sit down and you say to them, "Okay, well, what are you thinking? What do you talk about?" And so far when I've done that, it hasn't really been quite a fit for me. I'm one of those guys. I like recruiting. I like the competition part of recruiting. I like getting guys in there at a young age and watch them develop. I like watching guys walk across the stage, and it's just a different deal in the NFL. And so I won't say that I'll never do it. I won't say that when NFL teams call me, I won't listen to them. But I really believe that I'm a college football coach, and I have a really good thing going at Baylor, and so I would expect that we would be able to stay here for a long time.
Well, Coach, I hope you do, because it has been remarkable watching what you have done with that program. And I know the Sugar Bowl seems like an incredibly big deal, but as close as you came to the playoff this year, I'm sure you know that the ceiling is a little bit higher. Thank you for being with us, Coach. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Great to talk to you. Thank you.
You got it. Wow. I can't get enough of this guy. He is so good and so cool. Just listening to him is so inspirational. We'll take a break. More to come. Thanks to Matt Rule for being with us from Baylor. We are back. At Auburn was to drive up to Huntsville, Alabama, and pick up Coach Chiswick and drive him to the High School Coaches Association clinic. And I'll distinctly remember I took the wrong turn, and Coach Chiswick was in the passenger side, and Trooper Taylor was behind me. And so I cut a U-turn on the middle of the road, and Trooper Taylor still gives me crap about that. You can never cut a U-turn in the middle of the road with the head football coach of an SEC school, but that's when I knew I was going to be able to make it in this thing. You have to make tough decisions, and at that point I had to get him to where he needed to be, which was at the coaches clinic. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I got to decide what's important versus what's urgent. You know, not everything that's urgent is important, and not everything that's important is urgent. So that's what we're deciphering through. The most important thing for me was yesterday getting in front of my football team and putting my arms around them and clearly portraying who I am as a person and who I am as a football coach to them. And then today it's been, you know, presenting myself to our alumni, to our fan base, to everybody that touches Mizzou football. And then, you know, I got my phone on me right now. I've been texting, calling, recruiting. I'm going to be on a plane later tonight and getting in people's homes. And that's what we got to do. And as we're doing that, then I've got to formulate the plan for what we're going to do with our staff and how we're going to fill that in and how we're going to continue to move Mizzou football forward and how we're going to compete for the SEC East. And at the end of the day, that's why they hired me to do this job. It's so we can compete in the SEC East. And we all know that if you're competing in the SEC East, then that means you're competing at the national level. Well, we've got a full recruiting staff. They're still in place, and there's guys here still that are helping me recruit, and that's what I'm leaning on for them to do right now. And then I got to do the heavy lifting. I mean, they don't pay us this kind of money for us to delegate it to other people. That's our jobs. So I'm out there in recruiting, and that's what I'm supposed to do, and that's what I'm going to get done. And coffee's not that. That's the whole thing's off the table. Welcome back to the program. Vince Thompson will join us in a couple of minutes. We are looking forward to... anyway, I was just waving at a friend of mine, so he didn't walk in our shot here. 855-242-7285. And let's get back to the calls and talk to Bob. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for taking my call. I'd like to talk about three quarterbacks right quick. The first, Joe Burrow. What a guy with class. When the game was over with Georgia, Coach O handed Joe the game ball, and Coach Joe handed it back. And he was asked in an interview why he did that. He said because he deserved it. I mean, that guy has some class. His parents got to be proud of him. The next guy is the quarterback at Oklahoma, who stuck it out at Alabama, and he showed some real class. I'd love to have a guy like that working for me. And the third quarterback, and I'll let you go, is a quarterback that played in the Iron Bowl with Alabama. And tell people from Alabama they don't have anything to worry about. That kid's going to do a great job next year, with or without Tua. So thanks for listening to me, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Nice to talk to you.
Appreciate that, Bob. Let's check in with Dino, who's in Phoenix. Hey, Dino, thanks for the call. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. Where you at, baby? Hey, thank you for taking my call. And
thank
Paul,
you.
What a great time to be an LSU Tiger, man. I mean, it's just and Paul, I don't want to rub it in, but I'm in Phoenix, as you know, here, 60 degrees today, not a cloud in the sky, and about 10% humidity. So for the rest of the country, Paul, I'm a native New Orleanian, but man, when I retired out here, I just love it, fan in my backyard now. But Paul, I want to thank you for being so gracious and such a great host. I like listening to you. You're fair, and man, you had Jimmy Burrow on last week. I tried to get in, but thank you for that. I really enjoyed listening to him.
Oh, he was great. He was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, he was. He really was. And Paul, look, I've got several friends of mine that are Alabama fans. They're very gracious. You know, I mean, when we kid and we joke, we get along. And like I said, I've been a lifelong LSU fan. So happy this year. But I'm glad you put a guy like Squirrel in his place. I know that the majority of Alabama fans are good people, very, very good people. And I've met a bunch of them and partied with a bunch of them. But a guy like Squirrel, man, Paul, for lack of better words, what an ass. You know, I normally don't talk like that, but I'm glad you handled that guy and put him in his place. You know, it's LSU's year. I hope they continue. I pray they continue. And I just want to say as a final goodbye, go Tigers, baby. Go Tigers. And one more thing, Paul. I really worried at first about when the selection committee came out. I thought they were going to I was kind of apprehensive. You know, LSU played great. I said they deserved that number one seeding. But I really thought they were going to put Ohio State number one. And, you know, when they interviewed Joe Burrow, too, he said they will play him anytime, anywhere, just like Coach O. Well, even tee it up on a gravel lot. I thought that was, you know, that shows a true competitor, a true warrior. But, Paul, thank you again, and go Tigers, baby.
Thank you very, very much. Great to have you on. Grace is up next. Hello, Grace.
Hey, Paul, this is Grace. I'm from Birmingham. I'm an Auburn fan, and I've just been put into a state of shock after reading the Birmingham News that Malzahn has went out and hired this Arkansas ex-coach.
Yeah, Chad Morris. He was hired yesterday.
Yeah, I wanted Malzahn's ASS to go back to Arkansas a couple of years ago. I'm highly upset.
Well, I mean, listen. Don't forget. I mean, he's only the offensive coordinator. I don't think he's going to call plays. So I don't think he can do. I don't think he can do nearly the damage he did at Arkansas.
Well, look at Auburn. We just lucked up in the game against Alabama. I mean, I was pulling for us, but Gus called a timeout right before we were. Who was that? LSU or Florida? Or somebody that it should have went into the halftime. But like a dummy, he called a timeout. And then they gave the other team time to score. I've been wanting his ass, to go back to Arkansas.
That's okay. Say whatever you want.
I can't take it no longer. Okay, look on the sidelines. When he should be really looking serious to call a play or something, it's like somebody took candy away from him. He's just biting at his nails and up and down. I can't take it. It's time for him to go.
Grace, thank you. Yeah, that's Auburn fan. Gus Malzahn has just beaten Alabama, and she wants Gus Malzahn to go. I don't know what you have to do to make fans happy these days, but I know one thing. We will take a short break. It's been a very busy week on the program with, of course, Lane Kiffin, and yesterday, of course, we had the new coach at Missouri on. Vince Thompson, who has been with us quite often throughout the fall, is in New York today. Many things are going on. It's a busy week. I'll let Vince explain. And some news came out of a conference that both of us have participated in. Last year I was at the Sports Business Journal Learfield Conference interviewing Commissioner Sankey. But today Mark Emmert was there. But first of all, Vince, great to have you on. Vince Thompson from Melt. Talk about this week in New York. I had to meet some people up in Midtown by Central Park West a couple hours ago, and it seems like half the world is in New York City this week. If not half the world, the entire world of college football.
The entire world of college football, Paul. Thanks for having me. Fancy us both being in New York together.
It is interesting.
Not in Kansas or Alabama anymore, right?
not according to the rumor mill.
But it's kind of a big week for the business of college football. Last night was the induction of the College Football Hall of Fame members. An amazing experience every year. Pays tribute, to the leaders, and all the athletic directors and coaches come in. Today, as you said, and tomorrow, a big sports marketing conference around the leadership of college athletics. When I left the Crowne Plaza, Commissioner Sankey was delivering his remarks. We'll get to him in a few minutes as well. And then on Saturday, the Heisman.
Yeah.
And so,
And Thursday night it goes to your hometown with the College Football Awards at the Hall of Fame.
Thursday night, College Football Hall of Fame, ESPN Awards, and it's kind of similar to the Oscars. I'm sure you'll be working the red carpet.
They have me on the blue carpet this year.
Yeah.
It's been that kind of year.
Yeah, it has been that kind of year. But yeah, it's a wonderful week, and like I said, they cap it off, and also the Army-Navy game is Saturday, which obviously is amazing pageantry. But it's always
the president obviously got fired up by watching the Alabama LSU game. He's going to the Army-Navy game as well.
I think the president likes college football.
He does,
which is really not a bad thing for any of us
no,
in the end, right?
I think it's great.
And so, but yeah, he loves college football. We were all together in Tuscaloosa when the president came, and then we were together in Atlanta.
I mean, we weren't literally with the president.
Right. Yeah, we were being held by Secret Service, but no, it's college football, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute, has never been hotter, and I think that's the reason you're seeing a lot going on, even in the halls of Congress right now.
Yeah, I want to talk because Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA, made some news today, and he made some headlines. I don't know about news because when we played his comments earlier, it seemed very parsed. He's talking about change, but not yet.
Well, as they say, change is inevitable, growth is optional. Choose wisely. My sources say that the Power 5 commissioners have been actively working in the halls of Congress, and there could be some big news coming out of that. There's a working group of United States senators. It's going to be tied into legislation allowing the players to be paid. And some of the schools may move toward an Ivy League model of funding their student athletes. And so everything is on the table right now, unlike I've ever seen it, and unlike you've seen it in our many years.
So explain, Vince, why the paradigm shift? What's going on out there?
I think it's a forced hand. I think that it's inevitable. I think, anytime the money gets as big and the disparity, they're getting great educations and all that. But I think you now are getting a lot of smart minds at the table from all walks. And so, and I think this is one of the first times I've seen, the true fairness of the athlete, the consideration of the fairness of the athlete. I think you've had some court cases the NCAA and the EA case. You see the California governor open the floodgates, and so you're going to see some change. I would predict one day the Power 5 will be its own separate entity in totality, not a member of the NCAA.
So, what's going to be the first step? Paying? Likeness, paying. Which one?
I think the first step is the name, image, and likeness, and the athletes being able to take advantage of their image, no different than any other college student. But I think that's a gateway, or maybe even a stalking horse, to portend much larger changes to come.
It's interesting because it doesn't seem to me, and you work with a lot of these people, that the people in charge of intercollegiate athletics are moving or wanting to move very quickly. In fact, they did not want to move at all. So the California bill clearly had a big impact. What else is influencing those people to finally move forward?
Well, the thing you have to understand, and I've dealt with them for many, many years, is that these are a lot of academicians and athletic administrators, and they don't typically have the same mindset that many of us do who are in the business world or entrepreneurial world. And so you're kind of seeing that clash of those civilizations right now. And again, when the money wasn't as big as it is now, it wasn't a forced hand. And so now it's a forced hand.
It also seems to me, and maybe because I'm on these shows Tuesday and Wednesday morning with former NFL players, former NBA players, and they're influencing young people. It's all. I remember not long ago, you could get into a pretty healthy argument. You should play in games, shouldn't be paid. You should be happy to be getting a scholarship. And now it's all different, and it's all coming from top down, from the professional athletes who seem to be effectively and significantly influencing the athletes to be more. To have more freedom and to be expressing that.
Well, there's a generational shift. Mm-hmm. When you look at a 25 or 30-year-old who has $100 to $150, $200 million in the bank. I mean, look at Zion Williamson. Mm-hmm. He's 18 or he's 19. It's very well likely people like LeBron James were advising him.
Right.
Right? It's very well likely that And I think one of his business partners may be his agent. It's very well likely his shoe company is Zion's company, Nike. So, think about the fact that a kid in high school now can have access to advice from LeBron James or a Cam Newton or somebody like that. I mean, it's really the horse is out of the barn. The second piece is the technology and the social media never existed up until now. And you and I had dinner with Tim Cook recently. And if you look at Tim's going to have a lot to say about this, by the way.
He will.
He's going to have a lot to say about it because Tim manufactures the devices that a lot of this is being on-ramped on. And secondly, Tim Cook's in the content business. And so when you have people like that who are influencing the consumers, the kids, and you have stars like LeBron James advising or Jay-Z, and their age gap is not that far. I go back to this. It's a forced hand, but it's not like the NCAA doesn't want to do it. It's just that you got to understand their mindset is different than commerce and capitalism and consumer, and so But when you're sitting in a big place in Indianapolis and you're collecting $1 billion check a year, you got to have a little bit different shift now.
A lot of other conversations are out there, and you mentioned the conversation we had with Cook, Tim Cook of Apple, who and we were together with him at Auburn a couple weeks ago. He is a big Auburn fan, and but he's he's at the vanguard of all things, all change. He happens to be in Japan this week. Goes from Auburn to Japan. That's a normal path, isn't it?
Right. Well, he alluded that he had been in China. And then he had been in Robertsdale, Alabama.
Yeah.
And then he had been in Auburn, Alabama. But the thing that struck me about Tim is that, A, he's a wonderful human being, and B, very aware and very astute at what's going on in college athletics.
Oh, amazing.
Well, because the thing you got to think about.
With everything in college athletics.
Because this is the next generation of his consumer.
Right.
And so he doesn't want to do anything to offend that consumer. Because and I could see Apple playing a big role in all of this.
I wish we. It was pretty interesting when Tim Cook is giving the both of us, especially me, career advice.
Well, we need all the help we can get, and I guess there are worse people to be giving career advice.
I mean, and when you think you know all you need to know about your own industry, and a guy who's producing television shows, devices, new computers. Is telling me and you about what's going on and the things that we swim in every day. It was pretty interesting. Anyway, need to get to a break. Vince Thompson with us. We'll talk about some of the issues that are ahead. We'll ultimately get back to your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Final hour, we'll talk to Chris Lowe about what he learned being on the lane train this week in Oxford.
Laura and Paul, you both know him well. You've been sparring with Urban Meyer forever, and you actually worked with him in Florida back in the day. So I'll start with you. Could you see Urban Meyer, who will have a lot of options if he wants to go back into coaching, making this jump to the NFL and to that team?
Look, I mean, it's possible, Greeny, but I can tell you this. When Urban Meyer looks at jobs and things that he may want to do with his future, he first looks at the quarterback. We've seen this work well for him in the past when he started with Alex Smith, then Tim Tebow. And then, of course, at Ohio State, it was Braxton Miller who said, yeah, look, I'm going to go there and coach right then and take that job. He consults with a lot of people around him that would give him advice about, whether or not he wants to take this job. And I don't know that they would advise him to take it with Dak Prescott as the quarterback. I'm not taking anything away from Dak, but I think Urban Meyer wants maybe even a better quarterback if he were to go to the NFL. The thing about Urban, and you know this well, Paul, he would never want to go somewhere and fail. So he wants to go somewhere where he feels like he's going to have instant success and the best possible setup for that.
Well, Urban didn't like the president of the university telling him what to do last year. He's certainly not going to like Jerry Jones, and I don't know what Jerry Jones was talking about there, Greeny. First of all, you don't meet with coaches during the season. You have agents do that. Everyone knows that. Mm-hmm. And besides, I mean, you start thinking about the worst possible marriages in history, Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton go down the list. I mean, this would be worse. I mean, this would be the worst.
Why would this be so bad?
Because Urban Meyer and Jerry Jones would just butt heads from day one. Urban's an authoritarian figure. He runs everything. He's a detail freak, and Jerry Jones talking to the media after his first exhibition loss would drive Urban off the deep end.
Jerry Jones, it was so confusing because what he actually said was, I can confirm that didn't happen, which is a remarkable way to phrase that, one way or the other. Laura, let's take the specifics of this team out of the equation. Do you see him coaching in the NFL? Based upon what Paul just said, not only does he not like hearing it from upstairs, I don't think he likes hearing it from his players who are professionals and getting paid a lot of money. If you come to could you see him in the NFL?
Look, I think the attractive thing for him about maybe coaching in the NFL is he wouldn't have to recruit, and that does wear on coaches, especially guys that have had to do that for so many years. So I could see that happening. The other thing, too, and this kind of plays into what Paul said, Greeny, he wants to be the best at everything he does. He hasn't had that foray into the NFL yet. Maybe he wants to see just for his own whatever it is, ego, I guess you could call it, if he could succeed in the NFL.
Well, catch me up here. Is there a huge coaching opening in college that he could take now? So he's sitting out a year if he doesn't take
the only one that was interesting was USC, and they decided to stay with Helton. That job will probably be open a year from now, so we can revisit it then. Welcome back. We are live here in New York. Vince Thompson for a few more minutes. So, Vince, I want to just kind of get the lay of the land here from you on you're at this conference today where every important commissioner, president of the NCAA, every athletic director circling in and out, media, the most influential media who covers the game. What are the buzz conversations? What are people talking about when you get all these people in one room? And I've been there a couple of different times. Interviewed Commissioner Slav a couple of years ago. Interviewed Greg Sankey last year. I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road.
Greg Sankey's the leader in the clubhouse now, and I'll probably get a little grief for that. And I'm an outside observer. But from what I'm told, he's driving a lot of conversations in Congress. From what I'm told, obviously, it's well documented the CBS-SEC deal is in play. It's going to go to the organization that is conquering the over-the-top or the streaming services. You saw what Adam Silver said. The cable model is dead, and you look at it in the NBA ratings. And so to Sankey's credit, he's going to get ahead of that OTT model. But if you look, Paul, you look at the health of the SEC, I say the flavor is coming back. You've got the aging king, you've got Gus, you've got Coach O right out of casting, and now you got Lane Kiffin there, who's in that job because some guy mimicked a dog peeing. And then you've got the East, you've got Kirby, you've got Muschamp, you've got Mullen, you've got Jeremy coming on. So I would say that Greg's timing is impeccable for the value of the SEC football property. Now, ironically, CBS had their highest rated season since 1990. That game we were at LSU, Alabama, more than 16 million people saw that game. And that was an afternoon game. In prime, it would have blown north of 20 million. So the conference is healthy. Their timing is healthy. Greg's emerging as a power player in Congress, which obviously is all good for us. I would suspect that he had to bless Lane Kiffin coming to Ole Miss, because I do know firsthand when Coach Saban brought Lane to Alabama, they had to make a trek to Birmingham.
They went hat in hand to see Mike Slive.
And if I were a betting man, that meeting took place again. But I saw your interview with Lane, and it looks like that he's evolving his game, shall we say?
Well, listen, I mean, he is 44 years old.
Right.
He's grown up.
Right. Well, yeah, a little bit, right? But again, I think it's great for the sport. I mean, think about this now, and look at the West. I mean, you've got Coach O, you've got Nick, you've got Lane, you've got Gus, who's obviously got the upper hand on Nick right now. But I'll tell you a couple.
But may I add, spoken like a true Auburn graduate.
Well, I was going to say disclaimer, but and we were there. It was an amazing, obviously amazing atmosphere. But I'll tell you a couple of things. I still will stay to the fact that I think Tua comes back next year, and I'm going to give you one more prediction today. Trevor Lawrence sits out next year.
That's an incredible statement.
What's he got to gain by coming back?
Especially if he wins, even if he doesn't, he is the number one pick.
So what's the upside? Unless he gets a $100 million insurance policy,
which is tough.
And by the way, you could sit out, and then he could begin his marketing campaign already. So he's making money.
How? Okay, I mean, just let's talk about this for a second, because you have just dropped a bomb on us. If Trevor Lawrence sits out, what does that mean in terms of seminal moments in the game?
Well, it's going to set a new trend. But I mean, if you look at Tua,
and it is ridiculous for a guy that would be the first player taken in the draft, or the second, depending on the Trevor versus Joe Burrow debate, to have to come back and play another year when he could be earning money.
Well, that might be in play in Congress. I mean, how can you prevent a guy from earning a living based on his age if the NFL deems him ready to play? So keep your eyes peeled for that one.
Oh, well, I mean, no. I mean, I think what you just said here is remarkably important. So, how does back to the SEC and the television contracts? I know a lot of people go, well, I mean, I get so many games on TV as it is. I mean, you got ESPN, you got prime time, you got the SEC, you got the noon game, you have the CBS game. Why is this CBS? And again, let me reference John Talty's article from a couple of weeks ago, which laid it all out very succinctly and effectively. Why is this so important, Vince?
Well, because Disney is going to own the over-the-top and streaming space. Disney Plus came out, 10 million plus subscribers. ESPN Plus already has 3.5 million subscribers. Unless a CBS or a Turner or a Fox or AT&T, who now owns Turner, is able to be that aggressive and that good, because it's not about you and me, Paul. It's about my son, Carter, who's 19 and doesn't consume any content on anything other than a mobile device.
And you know what's interesting, Vince, and through you, we had dinner last Friday night with your son and 3 of his friends. And I was just thinking to myself, what's he, 18 years old?
19.
At 19, what I wouldn't have given for a friend of one of my friends, a father of one of my friends, to take me on a Friday night to Chops in Buckhead. I was thrilled to be invited as just a schmo who happens to have a show. But, I mean, the idea that, and these guys, the point of this is not to talk about what we ate. The point of this is to talk about how every one of them made it clear to me and you, we do not watch television. We watch everything on our phone.
And that's like I said, who and again, the other wild cards that we don't know about, Amazon, Netflix, Facebook,
Apple.
It struck me how much Tim knew. Obviously, we talked about that, and it struck me that all of the college football glitter eye and commissioners have made that trek out there, and he's taken those meetings because he knows that's his next generation of consumer. And we also know live sports is still the greatest last bastion of eyeballs in the country. But whoever wins the over-the-top race.
I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, but major companies now are, and we're not talking about us here, or maybe we are, but this program is being disseminated on ESPN Radio, on Sirius XM, and on the SEC network, and obviously on other venues through your app. But there are those who believe that a Disney Plus, an ESPN Plus, a Amazon, Apple TV, whatever it is more valuable, not today, but moving forward in terms of the consumption of whatever next deal you're making, than what we're currently doing right now over the top.
Well, I mean, I'd tell you, like
that's fair.
And Adam Silver said it. The cable model. I mean, and by the way, the cable model originated in the '70s, so it's not like it hadn't had a 40 or 50 year run. But the media companies who are evolving are going to win that race. But here's the difference: if you're watching a game in your household, it's only rated by Nielsen.
Right.
if I'm watching it on ESPN Plus or another app or streaming service, they know everything about me.
Got it.
So the ability to sell that data back to major advertisers is invaluable. And, it's like I said, obviously you've got some big boys lining up. You've got CBS, Viacom, you've got Disney, ABC, ESPN, you've got Fox, and then our good friend who has started DAZN. So you're going to see a lot of competition, but Amazon and Facebook and Apple, I could see Apple as a late contender to a lot of these things. And by the way, in the next 3 to 5 years, the NFL is up, the PGA is up. So, but everybody's paying close attention to what's going on with the NBA ratings right now because that's a younger audience.
Yeah, no, Mark Cuban started that conversation saying that everything on the NBA is is on cable. Now, that's not exactly true. The finals are on ABC.
Right. Well, the other problem is the start times. All your stars are on the West Coast right now. So
make a prediction. And I say this, for those of you who don't know, we work. ESPN is owned by Disney. We're not, we're just pawns in all this. But this deal is up in a couple of years. When will it be consummated?
I think before, probably in 21.
Okay.
It's particularly if it moves. I mean, that's a major thing. I mean, you think about CBS.
I guess the better question is, how big a story is it going to be?
Well, when you're getting used to getting $50 million a year and you get $500 million a year, and that adds a zero, and that adds an additional $40 to $50 million to each SEC athletic.
That more or less than Stephen A. Smith makes. I'm trying to remember.
Well, between you and him per hour. But it's not an accident. Here's the thing you got to look at macro-wise. It's not an accident, and I'm going to pick on the Alabamas and the Auburns and the Floridas and whoever else are building $50 to $80 to $100 million facilities. That's based on a come bet of what's going to happen.
How badly does this conference and its television partners need Nick Saban to keep coaching and keep coaching successfully?
Well, I would have answered that question a little differently, but I was thinking the other day, if you look at, obviously Nick Saban is still going to be about 20 to 40% of the value of that $500 million. Are
you serious?
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. You got the Cowboys, you got the Yankees, you got the Crimson Tide. There's very few brands, the Lakers, that carry a league. And I know Nick's been dinged and all that, but he did have some unfortunate injury circumstances this year. But I would foresee Nick, another 3 years. They got to get the stadium renovated. And then I could see him as your co-host on this show or some other show. If you can do it with Belichick, he can certainly do it with you.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Again, we're going to get back to the calls in a minute, but the headline of this conversation with Vince Thompson, Trevor Lawrence will sit out next year. Somebody just said on Twitter, that's not a hot take. That's like a smoking fajita through the window at your favorite restaurant.
Well, my question is, what is his upside for coming back next year?
I like it. I am all for young people flexing their muscle, and he has plenty.
Number one pick by far, and idle movie star looks, and so and if you look at the other guys coming out, there's. He's a generational guy. He's like a Peyton. He's like a LeBron. And so unless he's able to get a $100 million insurance policy, which he won't, what's his upside, particularly if he can go out on top this year?
Well said. Vince Thompson, you must come back.
Thank you, Paul.
Hopefully see you in Atlanta in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It's amazing.
We'll be there.
Somebody said to me, they said, well, I guess you'll be off for a while. I go, yeah.
Yeah, for a day or two, right?
Well, no, I did not realize as we were saying goodbye to New York today that we're in Atlanta 2 weeks from tomorrow.
That's right. Well, think about it. We were just in Birmingham at the end of July.
Yeah.
And think about how much is if you and I said in Birmingham in July and said Lane Kiffin's going to be the coach of the Ole Miss Rebels, they would have thrown both of us out of that hotel.
They're thinking about doing it anyway.
Well, they would still will.
We'll take a short break. Vince, thanks. Come back.
Thank you.
Vince Thompson joining us here in New York. Great conversation.